Good afternoon and welcome to the Seminole County COVID and business update of what's going on in our county, and give you updates of what's happening in the latest news with our CARES Act as well as the COVID updates. We want to thank everybody for being here from the press to help get the messages out and understand what's going on so our citizens can stay informed. We want to thank you very much for attending these. We also want to thank the general public as well as our businesses who continue to do the right things and be vigilant on pushing the pandemic flat as we possibly can. I think we're going to hear from Donna Walsh from the Florida Department of Health today on that front, who's going to tell us a little bit about how those things are trending and what appears to be good work and some good news thus far that's playing out on the COVID front. So again, we want to thank those businesses out there as well as our general public who've been so diligent in doing what we've asked of them, which is basically following the CDC guidelines. We also want to talk a little bit about the CARES Act information, those for business grants as well as individual grants, and also about some eviction mitigation programs, as well as some grant monies for those that find themselves falling behind in their mortgages and so forth. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. To date, we've approved 406 applications for small business grants in the amount of $3.44 million thus far. This amount reflects both the first and second rounds of the small business grants. As you may recall, we kicked off initially a first round from monies that we were given from FEMA, and then of course we got the CARES money, which kicked in our second round. So we continue to do the applications who've active evictions pending against them are on a priority list right now. So if you're facing eviction, you are at the top of our priority list as we move forward. After that, the applications are being reviewed in order of amount creation or timestamp of when the email was submitted. So it's all handled on a first come, first served basis. So as soon as you get in, you're not going to go to the end of the list. You're not going to be put in alphabetical order. It's going to be on a first come, first served basis. Over 90% of the applicants for the program applied and created their accounts within the first 2 days. So we had many people apply on the first 2 days, and actually on the first day, we had almost 90% of those who applied come into the portal. It's important to note that 80% of the applications that have been submitted have needed and require additional information. In other words, the checklist of items that were asked to be submitted initially, which are all online, many of those were not submitted with the applications. It is required that we get all those documents, and many have called and wondering why is it taking so long, so on and so forth. The reality is we have to have those documents. So 80% of those applications that have been submitted were insufficient or incomplete in the data and the documentation that we needed. There's a few actions applicants who have submitted status can expedite the review process once they are in the queue. Please make sure that all the documents submitted are legible. We need to be able to see all four corners of the document. So if you're scanning them in or you're taking a picture and then scanning them in, we need to see the entire document. We cannot accept documents that have been cut one corner off or the top's there or the footer's not in place. We need to be able to see the entire document. The one-time COVID stimulus will not be accepted as a form of evidence. So that is not part of the prerequisite. If you provided the lease, please make sure it includes all the pages and you are still active and has not expired. It has to be signed by both the tenant and landlord. We've received a lot of applications where there's no signature from the landlord or there's no signature from the tenant. It has to be a complete contract which requires it being executed by both, and it has to be in effect currently. Letters from landlords stating month to month or confirming that the tenant is living in the property will not be accepted. Eviction notices without a signed lease agreement will not be accepted either. If you provided a mortgage statement, make sure it includes the address, loan number, monthly payment, and account holder name. Most of that, for most of you folks, is on the same document, or you have some kind of statement that all that information will be on that same document. That's why it's so important that we have all four corners of that document with nothing cut off. If you've had or have an employer, make sure you've submitted one of the following options: 2 pay stubs, your last full paycheck before COVID with the date from January 1, 2020 to February 29th of 2020, and your first impacted paycheck after March 1, 2020. The second paycheck must be lower than the first one. We have many people that ask, well, why don't I get this? Well, the reality is we have to be able to prove you've been impacted by COVID. So if your payroll is increased during COVID, then obviously you haven't been impacted. So that's why it's important we have the pre and the post, because we have to validate all these items and we have to audit these. This money will have to be repaid if we do not cover all the bases and have everything in place. If you've been furloughed or laid off, you need a letter from your employer. This must include COVID as the reason and provide contact information for that employer. If your name is not included in the letter, you must provide evidence of employment. Letters from medical professionals are not accepted based on employment status. If you submitted an unemployment statement, it must be Florida issued from the Florida Department of Labor. If it's not issued by Florida, you can submit a denial letter from Florida Department of Labor showing you tried to apply for it. I know there was a lot of angst and a lot of trouble getting in to the Florida website early on. Most of that has now been mitigated and handled. But if you have proof or a letter or a statement from them, that will be required. Please make sure that the bills you submitted show the utility provider, name, account holder name, account number, address, amount due, and due date. Again, this is typically on one statement, and that's why we need the entirety of that single document. If you don't have it on one document, send as many documents as you need that tie it all together. We'll be happy to go through that. All questions related to the individual assistance grant should be directed to the Seminole Cares Individual Grant Hotline at 877-330-1818, Monday through Friday, 8 to 6 p.m. So you can call that number, which is 887-330-1818 to get information Monday through Friday, 8 to 6. In addition to businesses and individuals, the county has received nearly 70 applications from area nonprofits requesting CARES funding grants. The board has designated thus far $3 million to support these not-for-profits that provide critical and essential services for our residents, such as food, shelter, and other health care needs. Thus far, the county has approved $1.8 million in CARES funding to these nonprofits. Our team will continue to evaluate the applications until funding is fully allocated. So it's important, if you have those questions, you follow the guidelines. If you can't get in, send an email, but you can get in at 877-330-1818, Monday through Friday, 8 to 6, with your questions. We have a high volume. If you end up being on hold, please be patient. We will get you through the queue as quick as we possibly can. We also want to talk a little bit about the census today and how important that is with some of this kind of funding, as well as other funding that comes to Seminole County, and why it's so important that you fill out the census information. That has now been extended till November 5th. So Seminole County has averaged more than $31 million a year in federal and state grant funding over the past 3 years. With the county receiving nearly $43 million in grants during fiscal year 2019, according to the Budget Office, a majority of these grants are tied to our census data, and this is why it's so important we're all counted. As of September 29th, Seminole County remains number one in the state of Florida for reporting to the census. That's good news. Again, we thank the public for taking the time in doing the census information. So we encourage, even though we're number one, we still are not at 100%. Right now we're at 72.8% of our population has been counted. So it's important now between now and November 5th with the extension, it's important that if you've not filled out the census information, you do so we are insured here in Seminole County, we get our fair share. This also has a lot to do with our representation in D.C. and how we're represented and how people can advocate on our behalf for our region. So it's very important that you get your census data in. We want a full and true count. The United Census Bureau estimates that $2,000 was allocated for every person counted during the 2010 census over the following 10 years. If this trend holds true for the 2020 census, Seminole County residents' responses could equate to $944 million in grant funding by 2030. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money to help with the programs we've been doing during COVID. It's a lot to help with our community affairs. It's a lot to help with our infrastructure. It's also important we have that information when decisions are made at the local level. So we know where the impact of the population is happening. We're very able to vet that so that roadways, parks, recreation, all those things that need funding, we have adequate information on where those things need to be allocated and where the money's best spent. I want to thank the recent guidance from the U.S. Secretary of Commerce. Now have until October 5th to respond to the 2020 census. Even if you've already responded, check with your family, your friends, and your neighbors to ensure that we've responded. The census is a community-wide effort that can only be successful if we work together, and you need to go to the website, 2020census.gov. I know a lot of people have seen the mailers come to their houses. Some of you receive phone calls. But if you've not done any of that, go to 2020census.gov, and you can start filling out the information. And this is contrary to what a lot of people think. This is not, something that, the police are going to come arrest you if you've got an outstanding warrant. It's no intrusion whatsoever. It truly is just a true count. So it's not a big brother thing. I know I've heard that a lot from our residents and some of the folks in our community. Please do it. It makes a huge difference on how we bring the grant money to our community to help do what we need to do. We're also going to talk a little bit today about our emergency orders. For those, we've received a lot of calls about what's going on with our emergency orders here in Seminole County. Our mask order still is in effect. Pretty much, and basically the easy way to follow that is we're following CDC guidelines. As many of you know, the governor had a press conference, then issued an executive order that no fines or penalties could be associated and would be suspended on any mask orders or mandates. Here in Seminole County, we've approached this from a very, very educational standpoint. We have not fined anybody. We have not arrested anybody. We have not, picked somebody out in the crowd and said, you're not wearing a mask and here's a fine for $100. We've basically educated people. When we've received those calls, our sheriff and the deputies have gone to these places and just educated the folks and helped them understand the importance of wearing a mask. And I think for the most part, 99% of the people in our community are doing the right thing. And I think we're going to hear a little bit more about that and how this COVID virus is beginning to flatten with good work from everybody in the community. So it's important. So to give you a recap on that, when in place of assembly, business, or other places open to the public in Seminole counties, individuals should maintain social distancing. Members of the same household, this is a big question. If you're in the same household, you don't need to keep 6 feet apart. I mean, you're living under the same roof, you're dining at the same table, you're passing each other through the household every day. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If you're outside and you're social distancing, you don't need a mask. We encourage get out, enjoy some of our parks, our recreation areas, get out and get some fresh air. You don't need a mask in those scenarios. We also want to remind you, and this is another big question we have about businesses. Business operators are private entities. Many of you have known for years when you walk into a business, it says shirts, shoes required for service. They are a private business. They have the right to require you to don a mask to come into their business. That is their prerogative. We cannot make them do or not do that scenario. It is a private entity. They are in full compliance of law and can mandate whatever they want in order for you to come in their business. We've had a lot of questions about that, and we encourage people to wear the mask, but we want you to understand a private business has the right to make sure and order you to have shoes on, shirts on, or if they want you to wear a mask, that as well. We as well want you to wear a mask when you're not able to social distance in and around any crowds inside places of assembly or business. Today we're also going to hear from Chris Anderson, who's going to give us an update. Our great Supervisor of Elections is here today. I know a lot of questions have been running around about what's going on for election season. He's been a very busy man. And of course you hear all the things that are going on around the country. I think I'm fair to say I'm very proud of Mr. Anderson and our elections people who have always done a fantastic job here in Seminole County, and we're very blessed to have him here today. First, we're going to hear from Donna Walsh, our health officer from Florida Department of Health, regarding the COVID-19. Donna, welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. And as Chairman said, we have some encouraging news with the trending of the COVID cases here in Seminole County. I've often referred to the graph that we've brought here on many of our press conferences that are surge upwards in July. Certainly, we haven't seen that marked decrease in cases. It's been a gradual decrease in cases, but we are seeing a decrease, which is very encouraging. So for the state of Florida, for those of you who have been monitoring the dashboard and monitor that daily, you can see that as of midnight last night, the state has reported 709,144 cases, COVID cases, with 14,444 deaths. Here in Seminole County, since the start of this event, in response, we have reported 9,107 confirmed COVID cases, which, putting that into perspective on a daily basis, we look at how many are considered current active cases, which is, as of today, 326. And what that means are people who tested positive that are currently being monitored in isolation. We've asked them to please practice infection control measures and not infect anybody else during the period of time that they are considered infectious, which is 10 days after their onset of symptoms or day that their laboratory was collected if they're asymptomatic. As a reminder, unfortunately, we have reported as of today 217 deaths in our communities. 667 total hospitalizations during this response, with 31 current hospitalizations. And again, that is a significant decrease from what we had when we saw a great number of cases in July, which again is very encouraging. Our positivity rate, those testing positive from the total lab specimens that are tested daily, over the course of this response, 10.65% in Seminole County, but we've seen very encouraging daily positivity rates decline. We had a 2.38% positivity rate just within the last day. If you look at the last week, that's September 23rd through the 29th, or actually September 24th to September 30th, 3.58% positivity rate. We've also, the week before that, saw 4.07% positivity rate. So as you can see, that is going down. For the last 2 weeks, an overall positivity rate of 3.82%. Within this last week, we had an average of 29 cases reported to us daily, as low as 12 cases Sunday. And the week prior, we had a little over 38 positive cases reported to us daily. Kind of reflecting back on previous months, I often refer back to the month of May when we had the stay-at-home recommendation, and our cases certainly went down to 0 to 5 reported cases daily during that period of time, as much as 16 for a total week. We have far more cases for the total week during this period of time, and our daily positives can range anywhere as low as 12, as I mentioned, upwards to 50s. So we're not quite there where we were in May, but we are seeing a downward trend. In September, just finishing up September yesterday, we had a total of 967 positive cases reported during that month. In August, compared to that, we had 1,608 cases. And in July, again, when we had a marked increase in cases, we had almost 4,000 cases in that month. So you can see the numbers are gradually coming down. And that's in large part to everything that you all are doing in the community to keep this infection from spreading to your neighbors, to your friends and family. Chairman mentioned really what we have available to us currently are those non-pharmaceutical interventions that we talk about often, and that is the use of the facial coverings or mask if you're going to be less than 6 feet from somebody for 15 minutes or longer. It's the social, the considered social distancing. It's also making sure that you are washing your hands as you should often. And certainly if you're sick, please stay home from work, stay away from those that you may infect. We still are seeing that our most vulnerable populations since the beginning of this response are our elderly population, as well as those with underlying health conditions. Over 65, almost 66% of our deaths are occurring in those associated with our long-term care facilities, and we have about 73% of our deaths in 75 years of age and older. So that's not saying that others are not susceptible to complications. We certainly have seen all age groups affected, but we are definitely seeing a trending in our older population and with those with underlying health conditions. Speaking of our younger population, the state of Florida has reported 58,714 cases overall out of the total cases reported for those under 18 years of age. Here in Seminole County, we've had 704 cases reported in those under 18 years of age. We are working very closely with our school district, as we have since before, in planning the reopening of schools. Their plan is exceptional, working very well together in making sure that those who are reported to us with symptoms or who are positive are excluded for the period of time in isolation or quarantine that's we've spoken about. The majority of our cases are in students. We have had both students and staff and faculty reported to us. The majority of our cases are also community acquired. So, you know, again, the schools are doing a terrific job with infection control and working very closely with our team at the Florida Department of Health in making sure those who are infected get the resources that they need and also understand what to do in order to keep this from spreading to others. We are also continuing to work with our long-term care facilities. We have seen a gradual decline in the number of positive cases reported through our partner facilities as well, but we continue to have weekly calls, making sure that if there's any unmet needs, the county is excellent about providing those unmet needs, keeping in touch with them as well. And we have weekly calls with our hospital systems too. Again, monitoring what their caseload looks like in the hospitals, their ICU capacity, and if they have any unmet needs as well, anywhere from personal protective equipment or otherwise. So I would encourage you all to continue. As Chairman said, we are still recommending the use of facial coverings, mask, social distancing to keep others from getting this infection. Our State Surgeon General is in line with the CDC recommendations for the use of these what we call non-pharmaceutical interventions. As far as vaccine, we have received some preliminary information from Health and Human Services, some guidance, if you will. We have not received anything definitive as to when an approved vaccine will be available. We've had some projections that perhaps as soon as before the end of this year, but again, nothing official yet. And I just want to assure our community that we will be following our standard operating procedures nationally when it comes to putting a safe and effective product out. We certainly would not promote or stand behind any product that has not been appropriately vetted. So with that, we'll keep you updated as vaccine does become available. And I would like to introduce our Supervisor of Elections, Chris Anderson. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I appreciate being here. Allow me to address some concerns that I've heard from our voters. Our elections here in Seminole County are safe and secure. Your elections office is taking every necessary precaution and safety measure to make sure of that. I'm going to give out some important dates that, as voters, we need to pay close attention to. The last day to register to vote, to be able to participate in the general election, is October 5th. October 5th. So that's quickly approaching. We need to make sure that you get your registrations in so you can participate in the general election. The last day to request a ballot be mailed to you is October 24th at 5 p.m. October 24th at 5 p.m. is the last day that you can request a ballot be mailed to you. Now, we have some good news. We have added an 8th early voting location. It is in Altamont Springs. It is at 1140 East Altamont Drive. It's right off of 436, not far from 1792, right down the street from the Sunrail station, the Lynx bus stop. It is a perfect location in a very populated area in our county. We needed it, and it comes to us free of charge to the taxpayers and the voters of Seminole County. So we're very lucky to have that. So I encourage voters that are in that area, the Altamont area, the Longwood area, to use the 10,000 square feet of space to vote safe. Now, if you live in the Oviedo area, you do have two early voting locations, the Oviedo Library and also the Aquatic Center in Oviedo. We are encouraging voters to go to the Aquatic Center. We have been able to obtain the use of the gym, which allows even more space for you to vote safely there as well. So if you live in the city, in the Oviedo, Winter Springs area, we encourage you to come on over to the Aquatic Center to cast your ballot and or drop off your vote by mail ballots. So back to vote by mail. You can turn in your vote by mail ballots by mail, or you can bring them to the Supervisor of Elections office, which is located at 1500 East Airport Boulevard in Sanford, Florida. Or you can drop them off during early voting dates and times in a drop box that is located outside of the early voting center. Early voting dates and times. Early voting will start in Seminole County October 19th, and it will run through November 1st. That is the maximum amount of early voting days that we can be open by law, which is 14 days. We will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We will be open for 12 hours for 14 days for early voting. And you can drop off your vote-by-mail ballots at an early voting location during the dates and times that we will be open. Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd. Now, you cannot drop off or turn in your vote-by-mail ballots at a voting precinct on Election Day. You can return your vote-by-mail ballot to the Supervisor of Elections office up into Election Day at 7 p.m. So vote-by-mail ballots must be at the Supervisor of Elections office, not a precinct, on Election Day at 7 p.m. To find where a close early voting site may be to you, to find your assigned polling location, you can go to voteseminole.org and you can click on Where Do I Vote? And it will take you, you put in your information, and it will bring up exactly where your assigned precinct is located. Now, I want to stress something. As you go to vote, this is the general election. The ballots are going to be longer. You're also going to receive your sample ballots here very soon in the mail. They are available at voteseminole.org. If you click on Find My Record, you put in your information, your sample ballot is available. Your ballot is going to be it's going to be very long. So make sure you do your research. It will be 2 pages, front and back. Make sure you do your research so you don't have to spend as much time in a voting booth in doing your research. You can bring your sample ballots with you to vote, as you vote during early voting or on Election Day. You can bring your sample ballots with you to use to help you as you make your choices on the ballot. So again, remember, it's going to be a very long ballot. Make sure that you do your research, okay? COVID-19 safety. In the August primary, 80,000 of our voters got a chance to utilize the Seminole Safety Stylus, which is essentially a Q-tip with aluminum foil wrapped around it. It was a fiscally creative way to keep you safe, and we had a very good response from the voters. They thought it was great. We will be using those again. All of our election workers will be required to wear masks, gloves. There will be a safety shield in front of you and the election worker as you check in to vote. We will be sanitizing any voting surface. So as you enter into a voting booth, it will be sanitized with disinfectant spray before you vote, each and every time. We created a new position within the election board within the precincts, which is called the line coordinator, and they are responsible for the sanitation of the voting surfaces in each precinct. I've gotten some calls about safety concerns. So before the election year started, I met with every police chief and the sheriff's office to ensure the safety of our elections. Also, we added in a safety awareness training for our election workers, which was something that hadn't been done previously, and we do now, which we got a great response from our election workers in that. So everyone is well prepared, and we're going to make sure as you come out to vote in person that you are safe as you vote, both health-wise and your physical safety. Again, I'd like to stress that if you live in the Oviedo area, please use your early voting site, the Aquatic Center. If you live in the Altamont area, please use your new early voting site. That's at 1140 East Altamont Drive in Altamont Springs. If you have any questions or concerns, you can always call us at 407-585-VOTE. That's 407-585-8683. Thank you again. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Chris. That's great information for our people that are getting ready to exercise their civic duties this time of year and in the climate that we are living in. And I know as well as the Board of County Commission and our residents sincerely appreciate all the, protocol you've put in place to make sure the voters feel safe and are safe when they come out to exercise their rights. With that said, we heard a little bit about COVID today. We've heard about the CARES Act. I want everybody to understand in Seminole County, we are open. Businesses are functioning. There's been a lot of chatter, a lot of discussion about Seminole County has closed businesses. That is not the case. Seminole County has never closed a business during this COVID pandemic. We have followed whatever federal and state guidelines. Those included some shutdowns. But here in Seminole County, we have never shut down or made any decision to shut down any business. We are open for business. And I cannot urge how happy we are to continue to see what appears to be a good trend on the COVID front. Again, this is credited to the businesses. It's credited to the residents of this county who are gracious enough to respect their fellow man and doing what's right. And what you've heard us say many times, there are businesses out there that are suffering. There are businesses that people are afraid to go to. You should not be afraid to go to these as long as they are practicing social distancing, as long as everybody is following the CDC guidelines, and we will all get through this. The economy will come back, and we're going to do everything we can to encourage that, but we need to do that safely. So we need to wear our masks. We need to keep the social distancing. We know that there are some functions going on. We have the President of the United States that will be in our community tomorrow with a significant rally, and we will welcome the President with open arms to come to the Sanford Airport and have his rally. We appreciate their ability to ensure or suggest people wear those masks and social distancing. It's going to be an outdoor function, so we're looking forward to the President being here. With that said, if you have any questions regarding anything today, we will bring the appropriate individuals up to answer any questions from the press.
I have a couple questions for Chris,
Okay.
actually.
Chris, if you just repeat the question. Yeah, come on up. Repeat the question because people at home can't hear it.
Absolutely. Yes.
There's been in recent days a lot of talk about poll watchers across the country. What are the rules for poll watchers in the state of Florida, and is that something that you're looking out for?
Right. So the question is about poll watchers and the procedures to sign up to become a poll watcher, and what procedures we take in regards to poll watching. So poll watchers are folks that are either associated with a campaign or with a political party. They are required to register their list with us. We will assign them a badge. They have to wear an identification badge identifying themselves as a poll watcher inside of the precinct. And they are not allowed, so the rules for poll watchers is it's quite simple. They are not allowed to talk to anyone except for the clerk. And our clerks are trained on how to sign in and out poll watchers as they come in and the rules that they are supposed to follow.
If a poll watcher wants to say something about a particular ballot, does the voter have a say also to counter question, I guess, the ballot in question, I guess?
So in the event that, the question is, does the voter have an opportunity to speak on their own behalf in the event a poll watcher brings up a concern. And the answer to that is the voter does have a chance to rectify any concerns that are addressed.
Okay. While
Yes.
you're up there, can you tell us how many Seminole County voters have so far signed up for vote by mail ballots, and if you have seen any increase since Tuesday night's debate?
Absolutely. So Seminole County was the first Supervisor of Elections office to send out vote-by-mail requests to all of our voters because we knew that it was becoming a hot topic. So right now, what we're doing is we're processing the new requests that are coming in. Our first mail out will be 104,055. That's our first mail out. We have requests 113,000. That is a significant amount. Much more than in previous years. That's essentially a third of our voting population. Our new numbers as of today is 332,000 registered voters. So we're almost at a third of our population, a little bit less, that will have requested a ballot be mailed to them. As far as an increase is concerned, it's been a steady, gradual increase even before because the political parties and candidates have been pushing vote by mail. We wanted to get out ahead of it because every time a request comes in, that is essentially data entry that we have to do. So we wanted to get that work done ahead of time, which prompted us to kind of get ahead of the game.
Yes.
You touched on this towards the end of your comments, but of course we do have the president visiting Sanford tomorrow. Can you kind of elaborate on how Seminole County is preparing for that visit? And you did also mention that the mask mandate is still in place. Is there going to be any enforcement of the mask mandate during his visit?
Yeah, the mask ordinance remains in place, again, following CDC guidelines. We highly recommend, just like CDC does, that you do the social distancing, wash your hands, put on a mask when you can't keep that social distance, unless, of course, you're in a family unit and only those. The campaign is fully aware, and the president is fully aware of what our ordinances are and emergency orders are here locally. We trust that those attendees will do what is appropriate. It is going to be held at the Sanford Airport, which has their own law enforcement arm, has their own enforcement mechanism in place. And I think the reality is it's going to be outside. And I think that what we've seen is our community has been very respectful of each other's space. Yeah, I mean, just because the way we're built, once in a while I even find myself doing it, forgetting to have my mask on when I get close to somebody because I'm just that kind of interactive type person. Is it going to happen? Sure, it happens every day. But again, we're not here to fine, arrest. We're here to remind, educate. There's no benefit in fining or arresting somebody, and of course the governor has waived that. The governor has also waived, the percentage of amount of business can be open, and we welcome that. We believe businesses can open safely, but again, not only in these type settings, whether it's a rally, we have an air show coming at the end of October to the Sanford Orlando International Airport, which we're looking forward to. Those people will have wide open spaces outdoors to social distance and still enjoy the air show. So those kind of functions, the community's got to start getting back to some sense of normalcy. Whether we get back to full normalcy anytime soon, I think that's up for debate as we listen to the experts. But the reality is we've got to start getting back and letting people get out of their homes, do things, interact, feel safe. And that's why it's so important, and you've heard me just preach up here to our businesses, regardless of what this county says or the state says or I say or the governor or anybody else says, human nature, they're not going to come do business with you if they don't feel safe. So you've got to take the appropriate measures to ensure the public that they are comfortable enough to come do business with you. So that's what we've always tried to foster, encourage, and I think this will be no different.
And has the campaign indicated how many people they're expecting to attend the outdoor rally tomorrow?
Well, I think the expectation is somewhere between 15 and 20,000 is the numbers we've heard. We've seen things play out, throughout the country where, there's 15 or 20 and all of a sudden there's 30 or 40,000 showing up. We just don't know. We've had rallies all across the country for a number of reasons with numerous people, thousands of people, hundreds of people, dozens of people. You know, I think the reality is we just got to be smart. You know, and on that note, it just surprises me when I say be smart. You know, I've had to do some traveling here recently out to the West Coast and the Midwest. It still amazes me and perplexes me when I go into an airport and I go into the men's room and watch men come in and walk right out without washing their hands. I don't even understand it. I mean, with all that you and the press are putting out every day, every minute, elected officials are doing, the CDC's doing, and people still just don't do it. It perplexes me. So I think we'll be safe, and I think we'll get through this just fine.
Part of the county's executive order was about social distancing, keeping that 6 foot inside businesses. Does that go away? I guess there's still some confusion for people. Some businesses are still doing it, some others are maybe not. So what is the rule with that?
So the rule is there are certain businesses that cannot safely conduct their type of business donning a mask. Now, those may be like maintenance type people that have to have, you know, 3 or 4 individuals in close proximity. We know of one, which is airframe mechanics, who have to have spotters and everything close proximity to do that type of work. If you're in close proximity, indoor business, you need to wear a mask. Again, whether we have a mask order in place or not, people like Lowe's, Walmart, Home Depot, those type of people, they have the right to require you to have a mask on. And in my discussion with their corporate attorneys, they basically told us, we don't really care what you all do, we will require patrons to don a mask. Certainly.
Yes, ma'am. We're seeing some reports. The Miami Herald is saying it's taking up to 33 days to report COVID deaths. Can you explain the lag and why it takes so long for the reporting?
Sure. Every county is going to be a bit unique in that respect. As you're probably aware, South Florida has had a considerably larger number of reported cases than we have here in Seminole County. We occasionally will see a lag, and this may occur in cases that the medical examiner has not completed an investigation of. So that contributes to a number of the lag in reports. We also have folks that monitor our data in Tallahassee as well as here locally, and going through all of the reported cases, cross-checking to see if there is a death certificate on anybody, and we're alerted to those in the event that that occurs. So there's a number of factors that may contribute to that, but those are just some.
Are there any other inquiries from the press? Okay, I just want to finish up by also thanking Mr. Alan Harris, our Emergency Management Director. This is day 201. 201 days our emergency management operations has been operating and staffed. And Alan, I want to personally thank you on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners, the 7 cities, for all the work that you and your folks do. I know that many times it's thankless. You're fielding all these calls from the public. You're helping public find their way. You're helping them get directions wherever they need to go. And so we sincerely appreciate that. I don't think the average resident understands the tough job that you actually have to do. So thank you very much. I want to thank everybody for attending today. We will now have our Spanish translation. Myrna will be here to do that for us. We appreciate it. God bless and be well.
Muy buenas tardes y bienvenido. Resumen de la conferencia de prensa del día de hoy. Primeramente habló el presidente de la Junta de Comisionados del Condado de Seminole, Jason Bauer. Él habló sobre el Seminole Cares. Dice que hasta la fecha hemos aprobado 406 solicitantes de subsidio o becas para pequeñas empresas por un monto de $3.44 millones. Esta cantidad refleja tanto la primera como la segunda ronda de becas para pequeñas empresas. Los solicitantes tienen desalojos activos pendientes. Contra ellos se le han dado prioridad a esas personas. Después de esto, las solicitudes están siendo revisadas en orden de creación de la cuenta o por la marca de tiempo de cuando se envió por correo electrónico. Más del 90% de los solicitantes del programa solicitaron y o crearon sus cuentas dentro de los primeros 2 días. Es importante tener en cuenta que más del 80% de los solicitantes requieren un seguimiento para corregir la documentación o proporcionar información adicional, lo que hace que el proceso de aprobación sea más lento. Hay algunas acciones que los solicitantes que permanecen en estado enviado pueden hacer para acelerar el proceso de revisión una vez que es su turno en línea. Primeramente, asegúrese que todos los documentos presentados sean legibles. Necesitamos poder ver todas las 4 esquinas de cualquier documento que envíe. El estímulo COVID de una sola vez no se aceptará como una forma de evidencia. Si proporcionó un contrato de arrendamiento, asegúrese de que incluya todas las páginas, que siga activo y que no esté expirado y está firmado tanto por el inquilino como por el arrendador. No se aceptarán cartas de propietarios que indiquen mes a mes o que confirmen que el inquilino vive en la propiedad. No se aceptarán avisos de desalojo sin un contrato de arrendamiento firmado. Si proporcionó un estado de cuenta hipotecario, y asegúrese que incluye la dirección, el número de préstamo, el pago mensual y el nombre del titular de la cuenta. Si tenías o tienes un empleador, asegúrate de haber enviado una de las siguientes opciones: 2 talonarios de pago, su último cheque completo antes del COVID con la fecha del 1 de enero al 29 de febrero del 2020 y su primer cheque de pago efectuado o cuando fue afectado después del 1 de marzo. El segundo cheque debe ser más bajo que el primero. Cualquier carta de despido del empleador debe incluir COVID como la razón del despido y proporcionar información de contrato para el empleador. Si su nombre no está incluido en la carta, debe proporcionar evidencia de empleo, incluya su información de contacto. No se aceptarán cartas de profesionales médicos. Si usted presentó una declaración de desempleo, debe ser emitida por el Departamento del Trabajo de la Florida. Si Florida no lo emite, puede enviar una carta de denegación del Departamento de Trabajo de la Florida que muestre que trató de solicitarlo. Asegúrese que las facturas que envió muestren el nombre del proveedor de servicios públicos, el nombre del titular de la cuenta, el número de cuenta, la dirección y el monto adeudado y la fecha de vencimiento. Todas las preguntas relacionadas a la beca de asistencia individual deben dirigirse a la línea directa de Seminole Cares al 877-330-1818 de lunes a viernes de 8 de la mañana a 6 de la tarde. El condado de Seminole también, el comisionado también informó sobre el censo. El condado de Seminole ha promediado más de $31 millones al año en fondos de becas federales y estatales en los últimos 3 años, con el condado recibiendo casi 43 millones en becas durante el año fiscal 2019. Según la Oficina de Presupuesto, la mayoría de estas becas están vinculadas a los datos del censo. A partir del 29 de septiembre, el condado Seminole sigue siendo el número 1 entre los condados de la Florida para los residentes que han completado el censo 2020. Sin embargo, esto no significa que todos hayan sido contados. De hecho, solo se ha contado el 72.8% de nuestra población. Todavía queda trabajo por hacer si queremos asegurar un conteo verdaderamente completo en el condado de Seminole y asegurar que los fondos estatales y federales adecuados y apropiados lleguen al condado. Así que le motivamos que llenen el censo y motiven a sus familiares y amigos que también lo hagan. La Oficina del Censo de los Estados Unidos estima que se asignaron $2,000 por cada persona contada durante el censo del 2010 durante los siguientes 10 años. Si esta tendencia se mantiene para el censo 2020, la respuesta de los residentes del condado de Seminole podrían equivaler a más de $944 millones en fondos para el 2030. Gracias a los residentes y a la reciente guía del secretario de Comercio de los Estados Unidos, ahora los residentes tienen hasta el 5 de octubre para responder al censo 2020. Incluso si ya has respondido, consulta con tu familia, tus amigos y tus vecinos para asegurarte de que han respondido. El censo es un esfuerzo comunitario que solo puede tener éxito si trabajamos juntos para asegurar que todos sean contados. Visita 2020census.gov, 2020census.gov para ser contado en el censo. También en cuanto a las órdenes de máscara y de cobertura facial aquí en el condado Seminole, la orden permanece vigente. Hemos recibido una serie de llamadas sobre los requisitos del uso de máscaras. El orden de uso de máscaras y distanciamiento social del condado pues sigue vigente. La orden todavía está en efecto y continuamos siguiendo la guía del CDC. Cuando se encuentre en un lugar de reunión, negocio u otros lugares abiertos al público en el condado de Seminole, las personas deben mantener el distanciamiento social. Los miembros de la misma familia no tienen que mantener los 6 pies de distancia entre sí, pero sí las personas que están a menos de 6 pies y que están afuera en otros lugares deben mantenerlo, y si no pueden mantener los 6 pies, utilice una máscara a cobertura facial. Dentro de las empresas privadas, si un cliente no cumple con el uso de las máscaras, la empresa puede rechazar el servicio y no ponerse en contacto con la policía para sacar a la persona. Así que decisión de la persona, de los negocios, enforzar también el uso de máscara. El lunes se firmó una orden de suspensión de multas y sanciones por incumplimiento, de acuerdo con el anuncio del gobernador el viernes de la orden ejecutiva 20244. Como recordatorio, hasta la fecha, el condado de Seminole y sus 7 ciudades no han emitido ninguna multa o penalización hasta la fecha por incumplimiento. Nuestro objetivo es que nuestra comunidad ayude a controlar la propagación del virus a través del uso de máscaras y al mismo tiempo mantener la economía en marcha. Así que no se están dando multas, ni se habían dado, pero sí se está proveyendo educación e información para que las personas puedan sí seguir cuidándose. Luego habló la directora del Departamento de Salud de la Florida en el condado de Seminole, Donna Walsh, y ella pues nos mencionó que los casos sí han ido disminuyendo poco a poco. En la Florida al momento hay 709.144 casos positivos y han fallecido lamentablemente 14.444 personas. En el condado Seminole al momento hay 9.107 casos confirmados. 326 casos son actualmente activos y sí se verifica aquellas personas que han estado en cuarentena, están aislados en su casa, y se verifica, y aquellos que ya están libres de la cuarentena pues se reducen de la lista, y al momento pues hay 325 activos que están todavía en cuarentena en sus casas. 217 fallecimientos aquí en el condado, 667 hospitalizaciones total desde que comenzó este virus en nuestra comunidad, y al momento pues sí las hospitalizaciones han disminuido y al momento hay 31 personas hospitalizadas debido al COVID aquí en el condado de Seminole. La tasa de positividad ha disminuido. En total la positividad es 10.65%, pero la positividad diaria ha disminuido. Por ejemplo, ayer era un 2.38%. Significa que menos personas se están infectando, pero es porque estamos utilizando nuestras máscaras dentro de distanciamiento social y está siendo efectivo. Promedio casos que estamos recibiendo de reportes diarios más o menos son 29. Las últimas semanas han habido casos, algunos días 12 personas se han recibido que han sido afectadas, positivas, o hasta 50 y pico de personas por día, así que ese es un promedio, 29. Los casos de menores en la Florida, menores de 18 años, en toda la Florida 58.714 y en el condado de Seminole 704. Jóvenes menores de 18 años de edad que han tenido el virus. Durante las pasadas semanas, como les mencioné, la tasa de positividad ha disminuido. Durante el mes de septiembre se reportaron 967 casos positivos. Esto es una disminución muy grande comparado con agosto, donde hubo 1.608 casos, y en julio 3.927 casos. Así que permanecemos optimistas que los casos continuarán bajando en octubre. Agradecemos la cooperación de todos en cuanto al seguimiento de las recomendaciones del uso de máscaras, de distanciamiento social y quedarse en la casa, así como el lavado de manos. Continuamos trabajando con las escuelas y también con los centros de cuidado de adultos y con los diferentes, haciendo investigaciones y rastreo de contacto. Las personas mayores y las personas con condiciones crónicas de salud son las más vulnerables, y 60% de las muertes están asociadas aquí en el condado Seminole y con centros de cuidado de adultos, así que es bien importante de nuevo protegerlo a estas personas también. Seguimos recomendando el uso de máscaras y la vacuna, pues todavía no hemos recibido información, solamente se han recibido informaciones preliminares en cuanto a la vacuna del COVID. Una vez tengamos más información, pues le estaremos informando a la comunidad sobre ello. El supervisor de elecciones, Chris Anderson, también habló sobre las elecciones en el condado Seminole y que es muy seguro salir a votar. El último día para registrarse para votar es el 5 de octubre. El último día para pedir una boleta para votar por correo es el 24 de octubre a las 5 de la tarde. Hay un nuevo lugar para votar temprano en Altamonte Springs, que es en el 1140 East Altamont Drive, y allí las personas que desean votar temprano pueden ir a ese lugar. Se motiva a que los residentes de ese lugar vayan a ese lugar de votación. En Oviedo hay 2 áreas para votar también. En ellas, una de ellas es el Aquatic Center, y se motiva también, ya que va a estar abierto como un lugar temprano para votar, que lo visiten. Si va a votar por correo, puede enviar las boletas o llevarlos a los buzones específicos para entregarlo. Y deben estar allí, ¿verdad?, antes del 3 de noviembre, que es el día oficial de las elecciones. Recuerde visitar voteseminole.org, voteseminole o voteseminole.org, para buscar más información, encontrar sus récords, saber dónde a usted le corresponde votar. Se tuvo una buena respuesta en cuanto a los Q-tips que se utilizaron como en forma de bolígrafo y se van a utilizar nuevamente durante estas elecciones. Todos los trabajadores usarán máscaras, se irá a desinfectar cada una de las áreas antes y luego de que cada persona vote para que usted pueda mantenerse seguro mientras vote. Así que es seguro salir a votar. Si usted tiene cualquier pregunta, no dude en llamar al 407-585-8663. 407-585-8663. Muchas gracias y manténgase seguro.